Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Now, what you're about to watch is the first part of a 3-hour collaboration that I did with Krazy Joe of the MegaPodTastic YouTube channel and podcast via Skype, ranking the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Infinity Saga. We had a lot of fun ranking the movies and breaking off into tangents throughout this. Now, let the record state that I did not intend for this to last 3 hours, but time flies when you're having fun, I guess. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today, we are ranking the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Infinity Saga. That's from Iron Man up through Spider-Man Far From Home from worst to best. Now, with the prospect of ranking 23 movies from worst to best, I knew that I couldn't do this on my own, so I had to call up a special guest to help me. Now, I knew that I couldn't just call the average Joe, so I call Krazy Joe. Krazy Joe, how are you doing this evening?
All right, how are you?
Good. Krazy Joe is from the MegaPodTastic YouTube channel. You can find him on the MegaPodTastic channel, link in the description, and also through his website, MegaPodTastic.com. Did I get that correct?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So obviously this is going to be a universal list where we both combined ours to make it easier on us to follow along. So, like I said, how I wanted to start is I wanted to start with our introductions to the MCU. So how did you personally get started with it?
Well, I remember in May of 2008, I was living in Arizona. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona at the time, living with my ex-wife. And, we always went and saw all the superhero movies when they opened. I think the year before Spider-Man 3 had come out. And I think Rise of the Silver Surfer had been the year before. And the year before that was Superman Returns. And it's just, if a superhero movie came out, we were there opening day. So we were there opening day for Iron Man. And it's funny how time changes perceptions of things. Because I do remember when Iron Man came out, it wasn't this universally loved movie. I mean, it did really well at the box office and people liked it. But that summer, it was very much eclipsed by The Dark Knight. Because The Dark Knight came out the same summer as Iron Man. And I remember it was like The Dark Knight was the movie to see that summer. And oh yeah, Iron Man was pretty good too. But now here we are years later and we look back and Iron Man is considered this groundbreaking film. And it's just funny how time changes perceptions.
Yeah, that is true. I forgot about The Dark Knight. I actually didn't see The Dark Knight till about 2010, 2011. So, because I was pretty young for The Dark Knight back in '08. So I'm going to age you a bit. I was in the 5th grade when Iron Man came out. Yes, I am only 23. So yeah, the day that Iron Man opened for me, it was actually a half day at my school. So my dad picked me up and just threw me in the car and said, "All right, we're going to the theater." It's like, for what? And it's like, to see Iron Man. It's like, I'm on board. Because prior to this, the only Marvel movies I'd seen in the theaters were Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer was the first one to come to mind. I didn't see the first one because I had to get permission from my dad at the time in order to watch PG-13 movies. But obviously by '08, it's like, yeah, sure, whatever, just let's go. And I had no idea that it was going to build up to the Avengers even back then. Because if you remember, post-credit scenes were not a thing back then. So apparently there was, like with Nick Fury and, Mr. Stark, you have stumbled upon this world that is vastly bigger than yours.
I was just telling my daughter this week, in fact, yesterday, in fact, I was telling my daughter that the real game changer, and it gets forgotten, but the real game changer was the Incredible Hulk. Not Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, because yes, at the end credits of Iron Man, we do have Nick Fury show up and he says, you've just joined this whole universe. But talk is cheap. You can say that. You can say, oh, you've just joined this whole universe. It doesn't mean you're going to follow through, because Batman Forever referenced Metropolis. Batman tells Robin, oh, the circus must be halfway to Metropolis by now. Doesn't mean that they followed through and had Batman meet Superman. It's like, yeah, you can kind of, until you make the actual crossover, it's nothing but an Easter egg. And yeah, the Sam Jackson thing was cool, but was it June or July? I think it was June. Yeah, maybe it was July. I don't know. in June or July of '08, just a couple months after Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk opened, and Tony Stark showed up, and that made Incredible Hulk a huge deal because it was the first time two superhero movies had ever literally crossed over, and we saw a character from one show up in another and acknowledged, hey, guess what? These guys are definitely in the same universe. So yeah, it's a shame because I think Incredible Hulk gets forgotten, but it's like that summer, I remember it was the 1-2 punch. Hulk wasn't as beloved of a movie, but Hulk was the one where the crossover first happened because we saw Tony Stark show up. That had
Yeah,
never
at the end
happened
of the
before.
bar.
Yeah, that had never happened before.
Yeah, and he drops the file and says, I'm looking to form a new team, and it has the Avengers logo on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I just looked up Incredible Hulk. It came out in June of '08.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just about a month after Iron Man. And
yeah.
on the topic of DC, I'm a little too young to remember this, but weren't like Batman Begins and Superman Returns like supposed to cross over theoretically?
There were rumors. I don't know that any firm plans were ever in place. I always say the the DC universe's greatest enemy. People don't like to hear this. People get mad at me when I say this, but I always say the DC universe's greatest enemy was Christopher Nolan because Christopher Nolan wasn't a team player. And DC did kind of want to build a universe, but Christopher Nolan kept saying, no, 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 no. My Batman exists in his own world and does not cross over with other heroes. And Warner Brothers gave him whatever he wanted. And that basically put them years behind the curve because whereas they could have been emulating what Marvel was doing with Superman and Batman right away, it was Christopher Nolan who put that roadblock up. So people always years later are like, oh, well, DC's always trying to catch up with Marvel. And it's like, well, they wouldn't necessarily be doing that if Christopher Nolan hadn't stuck a giant roadblock and said, no, no, you're not doing this. So, but yeah, I think that would have been cool because you reintroduced Batman and Batman Begins, and the very
Mm-hmm.
next year you reintroduced Superman and Superman Returns. And if Christopher Nolan hadn't been such a jerk about it, you could have immediately started building your Justice League right there with Brandon Routh and Christian Bale. But it was not to be.
Yeah, because many people forget there was supposed to be a Justice League movie around that time too that George Miller was doing, but then it got
Yeah.
canned due to the writer's strike.
Yep.
So they could have been the Avengers before the Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Anyway, before we dwell on DC for too long, you want to get into the ranking of the MCU?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right.
Never fails.
Mm.
The dog whines that he needs my help, and then he does it on his own when I stand up to help him.
Yeah. All right. So
Sorry.
let's get. Yeah, that's fine. I was a former pet owner, so I can what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Whatever it is. I know I'm gonna get screamed at now, but whatever. So right into the MCU ranking. Number 23 should not come as a shock to anybody. Thor: The Dark World. You and I both agreed that this is number 23, so I'm gonna go ahead
Yeah.
and let you start. So.
Well, first of all, I like Thor: The Dark World. I always say when you have 20 good things, it's still 20 good things, but one of those good things is going to be the least good thing of the bunch. I would stack Thor: The Dark World up against a lot of the superhero movies we've seen, like Batman and Robin, which I think is one of the worst movies of all time. Or the new Hellboy that just came out last year. I mean, Thor: The Dark World, it's not a train wreck. It's not a horrible movie. It's just the least good of what Marvel has given us. So yeah, I don't hate it, but it's definitely the weakest.
Wait, so with Batman and Robin, you didn't like the whole "I to meet you"?
I like it ironically, but I mean it's not good. It's not good, but it's entertaining.
All right, everyone, chill.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age.
Oh yeah, that was good. But no, what did Thor: The Dark World in for me was when Loki died. Because that scene when he gets stabbed in the back and dies in Thor's arms is such an emotional scene. And then they retcon it 5 minutes later with, oh, Loki was disguised as Odin the whole time. Da da da
Now, you
da.
see, I thought that was a clever twist had they done something with it, but they didn't really
Mm-hmm.
do anything with it then. Ragnarok, we just kind of
Yeah.
immediately.
Oh, Odin's in the old folks' home.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I don't know. You could have gone somewhere with that where you could have. Is that coming through on the mic? Are you hearing that?
What? The cat?
The dog crying behind me.
Oh,
I
uh,
apologize. Give me 1 second.
okay.
I'm sorry about that.
You're fine.
I
All
think
right.
he's good.
So, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, where were we?
You were saying that Loki um, posing as
Mm-hmm.
Odin. And
Yeah.
they could have done something with that. They could have. They could have. I don't know. Yeah, I think there's stories to be told there. They that ending would have aged better.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on Thor: The Dark World, that ending would have aged better if it had led into some really cool story about Loki posing as Odin. But it
Mm-hmm.
did. So in retrospect, it was just nothing but a shock ending. It was what the hey, it was me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other issue with it is that they also killed Loki in the first Thor movie, and then Ult brought him back to life in end credits for Avengers, and then they kill him again. Then they retcon at the very end. So by the time they finally do kill Loki, it's like, okay. Is he actually going to stay down this time, or are we going to, see a magical return in Endgame, kind of
Yep.
thing? Whoops! Spoiler on that one. By the way, this list might contain spoilers in the rankings.
Oh, I think
Kind of,
everybody's seen these movies by now, though. So
yeah, but you always get that one guy. Spoilers bad. So is everything that? So are we good on the Dark World?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Something interesting came to light recently. Patty Jenkins,
Mm-hmm.
um, who went on to direct Wonder Woman, she was supposed to direct Thor: The Dark World,
Yeah, because
and
isn't that the only reason like Natalie Portman even signed on to do it?
yeah, yeah. Natalie Portman really wanted Patty Jenkins. Patty Jenkins was approached, and Patty Jenkins was attached, I think, for a minute, and then left due to quote unquote creative differences.
Yeah.
And apparently Natalie Portman was pretty pissed about it that Patty Jenkins didn't end up directing. Well, just recently, Patty Jenkins revealed why she didn't do the movie, and it was because she hated the script, and she felt that as a woman working in Hollywood, a bad movie would be blamed on her because
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg makes a bad movie. It's Steven Spielberg. He's going to get another shot. But I mean, she made a movie that was nominated for Oscars in like '07 or '06 with Monster. And then she didn't work
Yeah.
for almost a decade. So it's like, okay, if my follow-up feature is this big budget superhero movie and it fails, they're going to be like, oh, well, she was the wrong choice. So she's like, she read the script and was like, I knew I couldn't make a good movie out of this. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. That just came out like a week or two ago.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't see that one at all. One more point I feel that should be made about Thor: The Dark World. This is the first movie with the Infinity Stones.
Ah, yes, yes.
So this whole Infinity Saga really started here because whereas in Phase 1 all it was was we're just going to get up to the Avengers. Now, it was later revealed that the Tesseract was yet another Infinity Stone, but I don't think they thought of that while making Thor or
Right.
even the Avengers.
Right.
It was just kind of a, oh yeah, this thing here, we got to make this work now.
Exactly.
So at least give the Dark World credit where credit is due.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is when we later get to Endgame, Thor: The Dark World takes on a prominence that we didn't expect. And I think one of the funniest things about Endgame is immediately after people saw Endgame, I think the reaction of a good large portion of the fan base was, "Geez, now I got to go back and watch Thor: The Dark World again."
Mm-hmm. uh, yeah, so before we dwell on this for too long, let's just move on to number 22. And unfortunately, it's Black Panther. You ranked this at 21. I ranked it at 15. And just to show the camera, I am sporting a T'Challa shirt. So
Absolutely.
I'll let you start this one again. Why rank it at 21?
I I think it's I think it's the most overrated film in the Marvel Cinematic
Yeah.
Universe. People go nuts for this movie. It was obviously uh, nominated for Best Picture. I really don't think it deserves it. I like Chadwick Boseman in the role of Black Panther. I think he's great in the role. I think he was terrific in Civil War. But this movie is frankly boring. That's my problem with it. Is it's a boring movie. It really lacks action aside from two scenes. We have the scene in the casino where were they? I don't remember
South
where they.
Korea,
South
Seoul.
Korea. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So they went to the South Korea in the casino, and then the car chase afterwards. That was a pretty good action scene. And then the finale. The finale was a good action scene. The rest of the movie was very dry. There was not a lot of action, and also the Marvel Cinematic Universe is known for its use of humor, and I didn't feel this was a very humorous film. It lacked action and it lacked humor. The most humorous one was his sister Shuri. She was great. She was hilarious. I loved her, but she didn't get enough screen time. So I think it kind of lacked two of the main trademarks of what you look for in a Marvel movie, which is action and humor. It just it felt too dry to me, which is a shame because I liked the character and I liked the actor in that role, and I'm really hoping that I like Black Panther 2 a lot more.
Yeah. I actually take a different approach with Black Panther. I actually found it great that we finally get a break from the humor because one thing I hated, and this was prevalent in Doctor Strange, was they'd be in the middle of a fist fight and then mid punch they would break for a joke and then go right back to the fight. So without all that humor there, it actually lets the story and the characters kind of rise up, at least to me.
See, I don't know. I needed something. If there wasn't going to be more humor, I think I needed more action. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it felt off to me.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
the main problem with this movie is to me it had a great setup with, Claw and okay, we're going to invade Wakanda, steal the tech and take it from the black market. Then you kill off Claw halfway through the movie, and then it turns into this whole other thing with Michael B. Jordan and what was his name? Killmonger,
yeah,
where he's going to go back and reclaim the throne because his father is the same as T'Challa's or however that worked out. And it's like, okay, I know where this is going.
yeah, another problem is it opened in, what was it, February 2018? Is that right?
Yeah.
February 2018? Okay. In November 2017, just a couple months before, Marvel gave us a movie with the exact same story, and that is Thor Ragnarok.
Hmm.
Because both movies, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther, are about an unknown family member coming and reclaiming the throne, and the hero goes into exile and eventually has to come back and try to win their throne back. And so it's like we got that in November with Thor Ragnarok, and then we got it again in February, and I'm like, you just told this story like 2 months ago. You literally just told this same story.
Hmm.
That was my other.
And this movie, to me, if Marvel had a villain problem, this one showcased a hero problem with Black Panther. Because in this one, he is incredibly overpowered. Like, his suit can just absorb any bullet that he can take and absorbs it into kinetic energy. Whereas, at least in the comics, the reason why he had to hunt at night was because he could absorb a few bullets, but he takes enough damage, it's still going to kill him. Because that's how T'Challa originally claimed the throne, as Black Panther was his father died in action, and part of the thing is to avenge his father. Same with how that happened in Civil War.
Right.
Mm. Yeah, his father died preventing an invasion, and so T'Challa takes up the mantle of "I will protect Wakanda," and then all of a sudden at the end, it's like, oh, now we're going to have this outreach center and just open it up to the world. It's like, but aren't you trying to keep it secret so your technology doesn't get out, so that it's not the end of mankind as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, but you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my only real issue with that ending. I get why it's there, but again,
I've also heard people complain that the CGI in it wasn't very good. That's a
yeah,
complaint that I can't get on board with. I thought it looked fine. I don't know what people are talking about when they say it looked like people. I've heard people say it looked unfinished. I don't see that.
I compare complaining CGI in movies to complaining about graphics in video games, unless if they are like glaringly bad, nobody notices.
Yeah, a good example is everyone made fun of Henry Cavill's CGI'd mustache in Justice
Yeah.
League. There's really only one shot in the whole movie where it's super conspicuous. And that's the very, very, very opening shot of the movie where the kids have him and
Mm-hmm.
are interviewing him on the cell phone. It looks atrocious. The rest of the movie, it's frankly not that bad. People really, I, I don't know. People are too picky, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, or they just want something to complain about, something to stick because, oh, look, bad CGI. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whereas, whereas very few people are going to genuinely notice. Because was it a good movie? Yeah. Like everyone complaining about the CGI in like the prequel trilogy, or even do you remember Die Another Day when James Bond is riding the wave?
Yes. Yes.
And everybody was like complaining about it, but it's like, guys, this was 2002 CGI.
Well,
You can't compare.
the
Huh?
worst I've ever seen, and it looked bad by the day's standards too. Like the Mummy Returns at the very end when the Rock came out as the Scorpion King.
Oh
I've
yeah,
never seen worse CGI in a movie. Like maybe on a sci-fi movie that aired on Sci-Fi Channel Saturday night. Okay,
yeah.
but in a big screen. And the funny thing with Mummy Returns is the special effects look great at the beginning of that movie and terrible towards the end. So it literally looks like they started running out of money as they were going.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, the Scorpion King, it was like glaringly obvious that this is CGI. It's like, okay. uh so yeah, I think everything on Black Panther needed to really be said on it. Unless if you want to add
Absolutely.
any final thoughts.
No, not really. I just I was I it's weird because I think it's in my bottom three. It's in my bottom three of Marvel movies, and I always hear people saying, "Oh, top five among the best," and I'm like,
Yeah.
really, really?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's incredibly overrated. Now, I do rank it pretty high, mostly because obviously you can tell by the shirt. I am a Black Panther fan, have been since I read the comics in the early 2000s. So, that's kind of my bias toward him. And I really did like his intro in Civil War.
Oh yeah,
That was that
absolutely.
was the proper way to get T'Challa to take over the throne. Because then at least it kind of goes back to the comics, and it's the same thing. I'm going to avenge my father.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, you ready for number 21? I think
Sure.
you're gonna I think you're gonna be disappointed in this one. Spider-Man Homecoming. You ranked it at 14. I ranked it at 22.
Yeah, no, I didn't like it as much as Far From Home. I thought Far From Home was better, but yeah, I did. I really like that one. In fact, I'd probably say it's probably my third favorite Spider-Man movie.
Really, what are your other two?
My favorite is Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man
Yeah.
2. I still don't think they've topped that, but my number two would be Far From Home.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you were gonna say like Spider-Man 3 for a second. You know, with the whole Evo Peter Parker. Hey. yeah,
Spider-Man 3.
yep, jazz hands.
Well, that at least is still better than Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah, by
Spider-Man 3 at least has some saving graces. I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
can't
yeah.
name a
The
one with Amazing.
yeah, Gwen Stacy, Sandman was a great villain
Yeah, yeah.
because at
Good.
least they made him connect to Spider-Man and actually made him more human than someone like Doc Ock or Green Goblin, where Green Goblin was just a nut job.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Spider-Man Far From Home, my issue with it is that Peter Parker's not Spider-Man in these movies. He's Iron Boy.
Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that completely, which is why I'll be honest with you, everyone else in the world was freaking out. I was actually a little excited to hear that the Marvel MCU deal had broken down and that Sony was going to make Spider-Man, what do we call it? If I say Spider-Man 3, everyone's going to think I'm talking about Tobey Maguire.
Let's just call it
Spider
John Watts' Spider-Man 3.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I was
Hmm.
excited to see that made just by Sony without Marvel's input because thinking, well, if they can't reference Tony Stark,
Hmm.
that's not necessarily a bad thing because it
Yeah.
means he gets to be Spider-Man again. They've totally made him Spider-Man or Iron Man Jr. And as much as I love the movie, and I do love the movie, but there's one scene in Far From Home that's really bad. And it's the scene where he's on the ship making his new spider armor and he's doing it
Yeah.
exactly like Tony would do it. And you just see
Hmm.
Happy Hogan smiling, like as if he's thinking in his head, ah, Tony is back. Tony has returned to us. And it's so yeah, I was actually excited for the Marvel Sony deal to end, but to get a more Spider-Man. But generally
Hmm.
speaking, I do like the movies though.
Yeah. Yeah, they also removed all the character aspects of Peter Parker that made him interesting. Because in this movie, he's not bullied at all. Flash Thompson isn't a school bully. Then we have Michelle Jones as MJ, who's just very like emo all the time. Oh yeah, man, kind of thing. Also, the Vulture's daughter, what was her name? Liz Allen.
Yeah.
Liz Allen. That is not the same Liz Allen that would go on to marry Harry Osborn. Because how's she gonna marry Harry Osborn if she's all the way over in Oregon? Kind of thing.
Well, she could move back.
Yeah, that's
She could
true.
she could move back. Oh, and I mean, we know her father is still in the. I mean, he went to
Yeah.
prison in New York, so her she come
Yeah,
back to visit dad.
I was kind of hoping in Far From Home that he would like break out and we would just see Michael Keaton's Vulture again because I loved Michael Keaton as the Vulture.
Well, it does look like they're trying to build up the Sinister Six because I mean, he shows up in the trailer for Morbius. So they're
Okay.
bringing him back in Morbius. So I've heard speculation that Sony is going to use Michael Keaton as Vulture again when they do their Sinister Six movie.
Okay. Are they going to use Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio or no?
That's a good question. I guess
Actually how would they do it? Because spoiler alert for Far From Home, he did die at the end.
he did, unless his death was an illusion.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, we'll get to Far From Home later. But yeah, I just felt like, all the characters in the Spider-Man movie were just, oh, we're going to take names like Liz Allen and Betty Brant and Flash Thompson and apply them to characters that just, don't have the same characteristics.
Well, that's a thing that's been happening for a long time now, and it's something that kind of bugs me because I'm always like, well, what do you think these names are? Like, do
Hmm.
you think people, what do you think people, I would say, what do you think people are fans of? Do you think they're fans of just the name?
Hmm.
Because if you change something that dramatically, is it the same character? And you go, well, it's a new take on it. It's like, well, is it a new take on it? Or did you just take a familiar name and build a new character around it? I always use the example of the Supergirl TV show has this character named James Olsen, who doesn't
Mm-hmm.
act at all like Jimmy Olsen. Now, people get hung up over the fact that they changed the race. People, I've complained about this, and I've had
Mm-hmm.
people tell me, "Oh, well, that's just racist. You're complaining because he's a black man now." And it's like, no, 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 that's not my complaint. My complaint is he doesn't act like Jimmy Olsen. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, he's cool and confident and suave, and the ladies think he's sexy and they're interested in him. Jimmy Olsen was a dork. He was a nerd. He was the youngest one. He was the screw up. He was the one who Superman had to save all the time. So it's like you've literally stripped the character of everything that makes him Jimmy Olsen, but you're still using the name. So
Mm-hmm.
what makes that character James Olsen other than the name? Because I don't see any of the characteristics at all from the comic.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd like to actually expand on that and talk about more like character dynamics as well. Did you ever watch Charmed back in the day?
I did not.
Okay, but do you know what it's about?
Yeah, it was the sisters. They were
Yeah.
witches.
Yeah, the three sisters, and then Rose McGowan came in to replace Shannon Doherty, and she was the unnamed fourth sister.
Right.
And back to your point of, what are people fans of? Are they fans of just the character name or the actual characters? So obviously, in the original Charmed, at least all four of the sisters looked like they could be related. And then in the new Charmed, they're just like, nah, we're gonna scrap that. Have one white, one black, and one Mexican. And I don't mean to take this into a race issue, but the common question at the time was, wait a minute, how are all of these characters even related now?
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely weird.
Yeah, because part of it too is also going back to believability. Yeah, you have a suspension of disbelief for some things, like let's go back to Spider-Man and the whole like rights issue. Okay, so let's say they had changed the characters because of the copyrights. Okay, that's fine, but when you change it too much just for the sake of change, it's just like, wait a minute, why are you doing this again?
Yeah, yeah. Another example, again from Supergirl. I think Supergirl is the most egregious offender. In like the second season, they introduced a character named Snapper Carr. Now, Snapper Carr was a character in the comics, but the
Mhm.
Snapper Carr they introduced on Supergirl was like a guy in his late 40s who was a grizzled, hard edged veteran reporter, no nonsense type, reporter. Well, that's not who Snapper Carr was. Snapper Carr was this beatnik kid who used to hang out with the Justice League. Now, obviously you're making something in 2018, where I think that was 2017, 2018, whenever that was. You're not going to have the character be a beatnik kid because that's going to seem really out of place in the modern day. But
Mhm.
you can kind of slide it to an equivalent. Like the beatnik kid would have been the cool kid. So Snapper Carr should be like, I don't know, maybe like what's cool today. I'm a 40-year-old guy. I don't know. Whatever like
Um.
today's equivalent to like what that kind of a cool hipster type guy in, there it should be an equivalency,
Mhm.
but a balding 40-year-old newspaper editor, that's it's like, why did you even use that name? And you can't
Mhm.
even say for name recognition because 90% of the people don't even know who the hell Snapper Carr is. He's an obscure character to begin with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you say what's cool nowadays? Well, what's cool nowadays is watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe and quoting the first appearance of Wolverine was the Incredible Hulk number 181, last page, last panel. I only know that from Comic Book Man. uh, so, anyways, moving on, our number 20 is Avengers Age of Ultron. You ranked it at 15 and I ranked it at 20.
Yeah, I think we could all agree it's the weakest Avengers movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I
like
don't
it.
think anyone's going to argue with you there.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a fine movie. I don't dislike it. I know it got some stupid criticisms at the time, like people were criticizing, oh, they they made Black Widow a damsel in distress. No, they didn't. She had that
Yeah.
great scene on the
Oh,
motorcycle. Oh, you dropped your shield. She had so many great moments in that movie.
yeah,
But
weren't people even criticizing her because she had like that moment at the farmhouse where, oh, I'm never going to have children, talking with Hawkeye, who's got the wife and 2 kids.
right. People were saying like,
Hmm.
the claim was that she was saying that made her a monster, that she couldn't have kids, and it's like that's not what she was saying. You're kind of taking the quote and changing the context. That's not what she
Hmm.
was getting at. But yeah, I don't know. I think that movie got beat up more than it should have, and
Hmm.
Joss Whedon. I'm a huge Joss Whedon fan. I
Yeah.
love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love Joss Whedon, and it's one of his weaker works. There's no question.
Hmm.
I think Justice League gets beat up all the time, but Justice League was also directed by Joss Whedon. I think that's a better movie than Age of Ultron. So
Hmm.
yeah, no, I don't hate it. It's got its moments, but it's not the strongest effort.
Yeah. Well, one of my big issues, because you remember around this time, everybody was criticizing Marvel for not killing off any of their characters. Like they would kill them off and then, oh, we're going to bring them back to life.
Right.
Like Pepper Potts in Iron Man 3 when she takes like the 40 or 50 foot drop into that molten whatever it was. And then she just like walks out. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this one, okay, we're going to introduce 2 new characters, Scarlet Witch and Quick. And oh crap, we need to kill a character off. Quicksilver, see ya, buddy. And it's like, see, guys, we actually now finally killed off a character. Granted, we just introduced him and didn't do anything with them, but look, we killed somebody.
We should also point out, when did Age of Ultron, was that 2014?
No, that was 15.
2015. Okay, well the year before, in
Mhm.
2014, X-Men Days of Future Past opened.
Yeah.
And that was the war of the Quicksilvers, because both Fox and Disney had the
Yep.
rights to Quicksilver because he was both an X-Men character and an Avengers character. So we got 2 different versions of Quicksilver a year apart. And the funny thing was, going into it, everybody was like, "Oh, well, Quicksilver is going to be cooler in the Marvel universe because Marvel does these things better." And it turned out that wasn't true at all. The X-Men version of Quicksilver was amazing. They did that great
Hmm.
time in a bottle sequence, and it was like, and I remember the next year, Days of Future Past opened the year before The Flash premiered on TV. And I remember
Hmm.
saying, oh my God, The Flash has just been put on notice, because it's like, hey, you got a super speedster? We got a super speedster. Yeah, top this. And it's just that Marvel comes out
Oh,
with their Quicksilver, and it was like, I think everyone just agreed, like, oh, we like the one of the X-Men movies better. So
yeah. Yeah, yeah, because yeah, you bring up Fox X-Men. I love that scene. Is it in Apocalypse when he puts on his Walkman and his earbuds and then the Sweet
Sweet
Dreams and
Dreams.
he's just
Oh
running
yeah.
around?
And that's the funny
Yeah,
thing,
that
is
was
because
great.
Apocalypse, in one way, in many ways, the Apocalypse scene, it was just kind of more of the same because they had just done it in the previous film, but it was
Mhm.
even better when they did it in Apocalypse. It's
Yes.
like you took it; it was great in Days of Future Past, but you just like raised the bar and made it even better this time around.
Hold on, guys. Do, do, do.
My
Start
biggest
running.
complaint in Dark Phoenix was that Quicksilver didn't get one of those scenes again. I was like, oh, I wanted one of those Quicksilver scenes.
uh, yeah, the funny part is Dark Phoenix is the only Fox X-Men movie I've yet to see. I got it on
Well, I just
Prime and
spoiled that.
haven't put it in. Nah, I don't.
And
I don't care.
there's a part of me that hopes that maybe with Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, because the title is Multiverse of Madness, there's
Yeah.
a part of me that's hoping that they're going to bring the Fox X-Men into the Marvel universe through a multiverse, and that we'll get Quicksilver back, but the X-Men version of Quicksilver. Like, I want to
Yeah.
see when season 2 of WandaVision shows up on Disney Plus, like 2 years from now or whatever. I want the X-Men version of Quicksilver to show up as her brother from another dimension.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's address the elephant in the room with Age of Ultron. I really felt that this movie was largely forgettable.
Uh, yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
except for the where were they? Were they in Slovakia where that city came up out of the ground? Because I know that was mentioned later on.
Yeah, in Civil War, the Slovak
Yeah,
words. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, or was it the Sokovia Accords? I don't remember.
Sokovia. Yeah, yeah. I'm forgetting.
Yeah,
That's Sokovia. That sounds
what
better. Yeah.
whatever. The MCU fanboys are now going to be pissed at us because we can't remember that.
I got an excuse. I'm old.
Yeah.
I don't remember what
Well,
I had for lunch today.
well, I got an excuse. I haven't seen the movie since 2015, so yeah. All right, so yeah, moving on to our number 19 is Ant-Man. I
Ant-Man.
ranked this at six. I ranked this at 16. You ranked it at 18, so we're not too far off each other here.
Yeah, I like it. It's good. It's entertaining. It's a lot of fun. I
Hmm.
think the second one's better. But yeah, no, it was not much to say there. I know people, this is another one of those movies that people were like, oh, they're making Ant-Man. Well, that's going to suck. Ant-Man, he
Yeah.
gets small. People made fun of that movie. And it's like, I just trust Kevin Feige. He's given us too many good movies now. I trust I know he knows what he's doing. And it was entertaining. It was funny. Paul Rudd was great
Yeah.
in part. Yeah, just all around entertaining. And that was probably the first example. I know other films did it first. There was Tron Legacy. Tron Legacy did it first. But Ant-Man was one of the first movies where we saw the de-aging technology when we had those
Yeah.
scenes in 1989. And I mean, like I said, it was done in Tron Legacy, but not nearly as good. That was the first time we saw it and we're like, "Oh
Hmm.
wow, this looks amazing."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, oh, I'll tell
Yeah.
you
I
what
was.
I really like in Ant-Man was the cameo appearance by Garrett Morris. Garrett Morris from Saturday Night Live had the quick cameo as the cab driver when he landed on the cab, and I thought
Mhm.
that was hilarious because did you pick up on that cameo? I don't know. You're a little younger. I don't know.
I'm not an SNL fan, so I wouldn't pick up on it.
Okay, back in the 70s, Garrett Morris might be the only previous live action Ant-Man because they did a skit on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s where all the superheroes were at a party. And John Belushi was the Hulk, and I think like Bill Murray was like Superman, But Garrett Morris played Ant-Man, and the other superheroes were making fun of him. And they're like, "So what's your power, Ant-Man?" And he goes, "I could shrink to the size of an ant and retain my human strength." And the other superheroes are going, "Ha ha ha! You hear that? He's got human strength." So,
Uh-huh. And
it, it,
Analog Spider-Man kind of
yeah,
thing.
Ant-Man was like just the butt of the joke, and then it was just funny because Garrett Morris, who'd played Ant-Man in that Saturday Night Live skit, was the cab driver when he landed on the cab. I just was like, I remember in the theater, I was going, "Oh, that's great!"
So we could effectively say Ant-Man was like the Aquaman of its time kind of thing. Where Aquaman just got made fun of throughout the 2000s with, what is your powers? Like in that Family Guy skit where the woman's getting raped on the beach. Oh, help! You better not do it! I'm going to summon my fish friends and all the little tadpoles.
You're lucky you're not doing that in the ocean.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, but one thing I actually only saw this movie really because Michael Douglas was in it, and I'm a lifelong fan of Michael Douglas because I grew up on classic TV as well, and I remember watching reruns of Streets of San Francisco back in the day. So that was
Yeah,
my only real drive to actually watch Ant-Man. And another issue that I really had with it is to me it felt like more of a Disney movie instead of a Marvel movie. If you picked up on it, kind
that's
of like a
fair.
kind of like a remake of a Honey I Shrunk the Kids kind of thing.
Well, I have been saying for years that I thought Disney should get if he was willing to do it, because obviously he's very elusive these days. But I said for years Disney should try to get Rick Moranis
Hmm.
to be in Ant-Man 3 as Professor Wayne Zelinsky and reveal that he and Henry Pym were like lab partners. Because if you look, the flashback scenes at the beginning of Ant-Man took place in 1989, which is the year
Mm-hmm.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids came out. So there's believability there that Wayne
Yes.
Zelinsky could have been in on that project. So I think that would be hilarious. And Disney obviously owns the rights to all of them, so they can make that happen. I think that would get a cheer from the audience if Rick Moranis showed up in like Ant-Man 3 and they made that connection.
Yeah. Didn't Rick Moranis retire because his wife had died or something like that?
He did, and he's coming back now to do Honey, I Shrunk
Okay.
the Kids 4. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids 4 is going into production, and he is going to make his first movie in over 20 years now.
Wow, okay. Yeah, because I know that that for the longest time he just like, no guys, I'm done because I want to raise my kids kind of thing.
Right. He was doing voice work. Like he did some a couple Disney cartoons. Like he would do cartoon voices, but that's about it.
Yeah. So one thing I have to ask you about Ant-Man, because this movie revolves around a lot of like that heist. What did you think of the heist itself?
I was fine. It was fine. Yeah, here's one thing I'll say. A lot of the story, a lot of the story beats reminded me a little too much of the first Iron Man. The villain, Yellow
Yeah.
Jacket, he really seemed like he kind of was Obadiah Stane all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't. It was just very, like I said, Thor Ragnarok and Black Panther were very similar. I got the same vibe from Ant-Man. It was like, oh, this is kind of Iron Man again.
Yeah, because yeah, you just said that, and one thing I remember in the first Iron Man when he tried going up into the atmosphere and the suit froze,
Yeah.
and then in this Iron Man, it's like you can't shrink down to the size of that quantum realm because you go that far, you're never gonna get back out. And what does he do? He shrinks down that far, and then he comes back out, just like Iron Man figured out the way to handle the freezing.
Right.
Yeah, I just remembered that. So
And
yeah,
it's the partner that you're in on it with who tries to take over and wants you out. It's like, oh,
yeah,
this is kind of the same motivations, and I don't know. But generally speaking, I like the feel of doing it as a heist film. I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, and Michael
Mm.
Pena, he was so great in the
Oh
movie.
my god. Yeah, whenever he would like recount the stories too, it's like that was the best part
Yeah.
in both of the movies, especially his recap of the entire first movie, like 2 minutes.
Supposedly, I don't know when we're going to get to see it, but Kevin Feige claims that there is a video that we will someday see of Michael Pena as his Ant-Man character telling the story of the entire Infinity Saga from start to finish
Yeah.
in that style.
Yeah, I hope that they do that because that'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So anything further on Ant-Man, or you think we're good?
No, I think that's yeah, we covered it.
All right. So number 18, one you're gonna get mad at again is Spider-Man Far From Home. You ranked this at number 9. I ranked it at number 21 myself. So
Yeah, I really liked that one. I loved Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. I think Mysterio is one of the best villains they've ever had in the MCU. I think he's one of the best villains we've ever seen in a Spider-Man movie, which is amazing because I remember people always said that that was a character that would be hard to bring to the screen, and I agreed. Like I always thought, well, yeah, he is kind of a tricky character to crack, but I think they did it amazingly well. And I liked the idea of tying him to Tony Stark. Like I thought that was pretty cool.
yeah.
Bringing back Peter Billingsley from A Christmas Story as the guy. Tony Stark built that in the cave. Yeah, that guy. Uh, yeah, I really like this movie. The humor. Oh my god, I laughed start to finish. Night Monkey, the whole Night Monkey thing was cracking me up.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love this movie. I love this movie.
Yeah.
I had same complaints about they play up the Iron Man Junior thing a little too much. I kind of want him to be Spider
Mhm.
Man, not Iron Man Junior. But that's really
Mhm.
my only complaint.
Yeah, because yeah, like you said, I think that the Spider-Man movies in the MCU have the best villains with Michael Keaton's Vulture and Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. That can't be taken away from these movies. And I also did like the idea of the elementals and the whole using that was it that projection technology so that
Yeah,
Mysterio can just be the hero because hey, in these times people will believe anything, which
right.
is true. So, and it's also kind of timeless in that sense because it's not like, this is only pertaining to 2019. It could even pertain to now with the whole, COVID-19 pandemic and any other future pandemic. It's like, yeah, people will believe anything you tell them. Like, um, not meaning to age it, but did you hear the story about that pastor on the television saying, I can cure you of coronavirus through your television screen kind of thing?
I didn't.
And how many people bought into that?
I didn't, but I didn't hear about that, but I do remember. I remember when I was a kid, there was this guy who was always on TV, some televangelist who was always saying he was going to cure people through the TV, and he'd be like, "Put your hand on the screen on mine, and we will pray together." And he'd say he was going to
Mm,
cure you of everything, and I always wondered, I'm like,
yeah,
wonder if any how would anyone know? How would anyone know if this guy cured them or not? It's like, how
yeah,
would you know?
yeah. Have you ever seen what was it My Name Is Earl where he got that kid to like cure the people or something like that?
I never
Did
saw
you ever
that.
watch that?
I saw that
It's
show
kind
off
it's
and
kind
on.
oh yeah, it was kind of the same thing where it's like, power of God, power of God, power of God, cured. And then the guy would just like rise up and start dancing and it all turned out to be a sham. Yeah. Uh, yeah, anyway, back to Spider-Man. Me personally, I put both of these movies on the same level of bad, largely because to me this isn't Spider-Man. If I want to watch a Spider-Man movie, I'm going to go back and watch the Sam Raimi trilogy before I go back and rewatch these personally, because this one you lose the homemade feel to Spider-Man. Because part of Spider-Man was he built the suit himself, and in this one it's all metallic or he's got all these gadgets that previously weren't there. I do like how they did add the nets in between the arms and the legs to give him the gliding ability. At least that part from the comics came back that the Sam Raimis didn't have.
Yeah, I do. I think Tom Holland feels like Spider-Man to me. He just feels like Spider. I feel like in terms of performance, I think Tom Holland's the best Spider-Man because Tobey Maguire was nerdy enough, but he wasn't. Spider-Man was always known for his wisecracks, and Tobey Maguire kind of lacked that. The Tobey Maguire version wasn't always wisecracking, and that was missing. And then we got to Andrew Garfield, and it was like, okay, now he's wisecracking, but he looks too cool. He looks like this guy's a little too good looking to be Peter Parker, or he's got to be a little nerdier. And I kind of feel like with Tom Holland, they've nailed it more. It's like, okay, this is a good, they've got the balance here. This guy feels like
Mm-hmm.
Spider Man to me. And
Yeah.
the suit stuff is just, it's a little too Iron Man. I don't know. I wish he didn't have an AI that he could talk to in his suit. That I mean, it's
Yeah.
amusing. I mean, they got some funny jokes out of it, but it's like it that's not really Spider-Man. So, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, yeah, just like as I said before, I was kind of hoping that the Marvel deal would end because if Sony didn't have the rights to Tony Stark or those characters, it would be kind of forced to take it back to, you know, it would still be Tom Holland, but now he wouldn't have that like high tech suit he could talk to or things like that anymore. So I would have preferred that.
Mm-hmm. Bringing it back to what you said about Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, yeah, was geeky enough because the problem with Andrew Garfield was to me he always looked too old to be in high school. If you go back and watch those movies, it's like, oh yeah, a 25-year-old trying to play a 16-year-old. How's that
Yeah,
going to work out? And then you have Tom Holland, where it's like clearly he's in his early 20s, but he still looks young enough. He can still pass off as a high schooler if you just like drop him in randomly.
yeah.
Yeah. So, what did you think of the first post-credit scene with J.K. Simmons coming back as J. Jonah Jameson?
Oh, I really enjoyed that. It was spoiled for me by one of my viewers,
Uh,
isn't. Well, I should give the backstory. Uh, I get along with most people. I get along with 90% of people. This was a complete and total jerk that I used to work with. And he's one of those guys you can't get rid of, no matter how hard you try.
Hmm.
He just doesn't go away. And the morning that the movie opened, like 9 a.m. in the morning, I had tickets for that night. I was going in the evening, and at 9 a.m. he wrote in my on the comments on one of my videos, I just saw Spider-Man. I was so shocked to see J.K. Simmons back and I'm like, you piece of crap. Why would you write that at 9 a.m.? You know people didn't have a chance to see this yet. So it was ruined for me, but then I deleted it as quick as I could because it was in the comments on one of my videos on YouTube. And I'm like, well, any of my viewers who look at the comments are going to see this and they're going to get it spoiled for them too. So I
Wait, is that why in your Crazy After Darks everybody always says spoiler alert? J.K. Simmons is in Spider-Man Far From Home.
oh yeah, yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah, because I see that all the time when I go in there. Spoiler alert, J.K. Simmons, kind of thing. The one
Yeah.
post-credit scene I really did not like, and I don't mean to jump the gun here, is the one where Maria Hill and Nick Fury are revealed to be Skrulls the entire time. That to me just made absolutely no sense because it's like, wait a minute, were they Skrulls the entire time, even going back to the Avengers? Because Captain Marvel took place in '95, so have they been hiding off the whole time? Like, what's the deal with this?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's just this movie. I think it's just this movie. I think it's basically just since Endgame because Captain Marvel and Nick Fury were seen at Tony Stark's funeral in
Mm-hmm.
Endgame, and I'm pretty sure that was Nick Fury that went to the funeral. But I think just like after that, all he left the planet to start building Sword or whatever in space. So yeah, I think it was just, and I liked that twist because Nick Fury was out of character the whole movie. There was just something off. He didn't quite feel like Nick Fury, so I thought that was kind of a cool, like, well, this is why it didn't feel like Nick Fury. It wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that always got
Uh,
spoiled for me too. That always
yeah.
got spoiled for me too by my wife because my wife doesn't care about spoilers and she'll read ahead on things.
Mm-hmm.
And she apparently read that Nick Fury and Maria Hill turned out to be Skrulls the whole movie. So I read the thing about J. Jonah Jameson, and I was like, oh my god, that son of a bitch, John! You can believe he wrote that blah blah blah. He spoiled something for the movie. He spoiled something. And she goes, what did he spoil? Skrulls? That there's Skrulls in it? And I go, there are Skrulls in it? And she completely at that moment realized that wasn't it. And she goes, well, I don't know. I didn't see it. I'm guessing. Is that it? Are there scrolls in it or something? And I go, no, that's not it. So then we get to the end credits and they turn out to be scrolls. She's like, yeah, I thought that's what he spoiled for you, so I had to backtrack it real fast when I realized that that's not what you had heard.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because yeah, you just said about Nick Fury not acting in character, and I remember that scene in the hotel room when he knocks out his friend, and it's like, you're a very tough man to get a hold of, Spider-Man, and people keep like knocking on the door, interrupting him, and it's like, if one more person knocks on that damn door, I swear. And it's like, man, I just want him to break out into like Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction right now. The whole like Ezekiel 2517 just pump somebody full of those tranquilizers.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Before we move on, I read somewhere that apparently the Skrulls were supposed to be in X-Men Dark Phoenix, and then they got cut because the Disney Fox buyout. I personally haven't seen the movie. This is why I'm asking you this. What's the is the theory valid or not?
Oh,
Do you believe
it's
the
been
theory's valid?
confirmed. It's been confirmed by the filmmakers. That's not even a question. Yeah, they were going to be scrolls in the movie, but they got scrapped. It's kind of generic aliens now. They're not scrolls anymore. But I think that's a movie people love to beat up on the Fox X-Men movies, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a little unfair because they've been hit or miss. I mean, you had some that weren't that
Yeah.
good, but some of them, like Days of Future Past, I'd put Days of Future Past right up there among some of the best Marvel movies. Days of Future Past is incredible, and so is
Yes.
Logan. Logan
Hmm.
is a terrific movie. So it's like, okay, yeah, maybe X-Men 3 isn't so hot. Wolverine, the first Wolverine movie, flat out was garbage.
Oh,
But, those movies, if you count them up, there's more good ones than bad ones.
yeah. Yeah, the only one I say is terrible, and keep in mind I haven't seen X-Men Dark Phoenix, is that X-Men Origins Wolverine. And unfortunately, that was the very first X-Men movie I ever saw. Because I rented
Yeah.
it from Redbox, and I'm like, okay, this is a little weird. And then I go back and I watch the original, and I'm like, that's a good one. Because everybody forgets that, like, without those Fox X-Men movies, I don't think comic book movies would even be where they are today. Because yeah, they were around, back in the '70s with the Superman movies, and then Batman came
Right.
along and was a cultural zenith, and then X-Men came around. It's like, holy shit, look at what they can do. And X-Men 2 was always ranked as like one of the top 5 comic book movies of all time. So
Yeah.
why is it all of a sudden now you're like slamming it when, just like 5-10 years ago you were singing the praises?
I always say the X-Men movies are a series that people forget that they like. I
Hmm.
always say that because every time an X-Men movie is about to come out, people are like, "Oh, it's going to suck. These movies suck." And then the movie comes out, and more often than not, people are like, "Hey, that was pretty good."
Hmm.
Even with Dark Phoenix, I know critics hated it. Critics trashed it, and it didn't do too well at the box office. But everybody I know who actually went out to see it walked away like, I thought that was going to be terrible. That really wasn't that bad. I heard that from almost everybody I know who actually went to see the movie. So I think that I don't know. That's my takeaway is that people forget they like those movies until they watch them.
Hmm. Now, in defense of those people that slammed the Fox X-Men movies for years, you have to remember X-Men Origins Wolverine burned a lot of goodwill at the time with people.
Well,
I don't think X-Men 3 really did as much, because the takeaway from that was it was a mixed bag. Because the storyline was decent, but everything else sucked. Like the Dark Phoenix storyline just being thrown in there randomly. But then, the story where there's like a cure for the mutant virus, it's like, hey, that's actually quite interesting.
yeah, I think X-Men 3 was not well received. And if they had
Hmm.
bounced right back with another good one right after
Yeah.
that, I think they would have been fine. But it was like two misfires in a row. X-Men 3 was bad, Wolverine was worse. And they were two consecutive films. And then we didn't get anything for a couple of years. And the next thing we got was going to be a prequel with First Class.
Hmm.
And I think people just didn't have faith because, the Star Wars prequels weren't so hot. And I think there was kind of prequel burnout at that time where people are like, oh, prequels, that's what you do when you don't know what else to do, you do a prequel.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, oh, we got two X-Men movies and now they're doing the prequel. This is going to suck. And then First Class came out. And again, like I say, people forget they like the X-Men movies. First Class came out. Everybody liked it.
Hmm.
So there you go.
I'll be the first one to admit I was on that bandwagon where I thought First Class, like, oh, I'm not gonna waste my time with this because the last two were bad. Then I saw it and I'm like, that was actually pretty good. I like James McAvoy as Professor X, and even Michael Fassbender as Magneto. Sorry, I had a brain fart there for a second. The one person I never liked in those movies was Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, but that's just because I just don't like Jennifer Lawrence really to begin with.
See, I thought she was fine. I know a lot of people complained that they turned Mystique into one of the heroes, but I think that's a
Hmm.
case of star power winning out because when they cast her as
Yeah.
Mystique, she was a nobody, but then she went on to become a huge star. And it's like, oh, we got one of the biggest stars in
Yeah.
Hollywood right now. She's got to be one of our heroes now. So,
Yeah. Thanks, Hunger Games, for that one. Yeah. And then, everybody with Days of Future Past, I even remember that narrative. Oh, this movie's going to suck. It's going to be terrible. Days of Future Past come out. Holy shit, this was such a good X-Men movie. Blah, blah, blah. It fixed the problem with X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine.
yeah,
Yay!
yeah.
And then X-Men Apocalypse came out. And then I feel like those guys were finally just like, finally something we can jump on. Even though I didn't think Apocalypse was all that bad by comparison to the rest of the series.
Oh no, Apocalypse was, I think, fine. I think it was a fine movie. It wasn't as good as Days of Future Past. It wasn't as good as First
Hmm.
Class, but it was. I had no issue, and I like Dark Phoenix too. I thought Dark Phoenix was pretty good. The only ones that I would say I absolutely hated. Well, the only one I absolutely hate is Wolverine. That's it.
Hmm.
And X-Men 3 was, it was fairly weak. But yeah, those are the only two I would say I have a problem with.
Yeah. No, one thing I just thought of that's really funny. This is why you always tune in for a guest spot, because we start off with an MCU ranking. We talk about Fox X-Men movies and DC and Superman. So, you're ready to get to number 17? This concludes part 1 of the 3-hour collaboration. Come back tomorrow to watch part 2.